Six Flags Over Georgia is a park located in Austell, Georgia, United States. And apparently, I had the fortune to get to this park by staying at a lake house in Eatonton. If this didn't happen, I'm positive I wouldn't get a coaster credit anytime soon. But I coincidentally took my visit to this park on Saturday, April 16th, 2022. So, how good or bad was this introduction to a new year full of coasters for me? Top of the day to the enthusiasts. I am Sky Guy R12 Turn, and this is my reflection on my visit to Six Flags Over Georgia. We arrived at the park in less than an hour after it opened, but for some reason, we ended up parking in that very small parking lot just adjacent to the park entrance. Six Flags Over Georgia has two big parking lots, but then there's a third one that's so small, my best guess for how many cars could fit on it at most is 36. Anyways, we got to the park entrance, and all I have to say, that's a good first impression. The park's logo just above a fountain covered by a station structure with trees adds atmosphere to the park. Most of the other things is just Six Flags fashion. So then I got started, and the first roller coaster that I hit was Daredevil Dive, which isn't a surprise to any of you, because some of you may know that this coaster has atrocious capacity. This was the longest line I had to wait in the park, but it was worth it even though I'm not a big fan of this coaster. A lot of enthusiasts say this is a great Gerstlauer, but I wasn't impressed. I rode this coaster in the middle row, and the restraints were kind of tight, which probably explains why the only time I left out of my seat was on that Heartline roll at the end of the ride. Even worse, it made me learn that I can't film my GoPro camera while riding it, which is unfortunately the case for all the other coasters in the park. So, no on-ride POVs coming from this park. That being said, it was a nice introduction to the manufacturer. The next roller coaster I rode at this park is my personal favorite, Goliath. I rode it in the front row, and I thought it was amazing. Its helix was really forceful, and it has plenty of airtime throughout its course, just like how a B&M Hyper should be. But one thing that I'd really like to point out is that if you've ridden this roller coaster, you know that its exit is really long. First, you leave the station to come across the station where the park stores the roller coaster trains, and then after a while, you'll walk right into the ride's own gift shop. So yeah, that's a pretty long exit. But bending our way to the DC area, the third coaster I rode was Riddler Mindbender. And I would like to thank my dad for getting on this coaster with us, because he does not like riding extreme roller coasters, and he stood up to his fear. A lot of people say that this is one of the best Schwarzkopfs out there, and rank it number 3 in the park, but I wouldn't go that far. One of the reasons is because I found there to be a rattle on this ride. It was at the bottom of that curved drop in the ditch, right next to the loop, which is what you're seeing right now in this footage. It wasn't headache-inducing, but it was strong enough for me to call it a rattle. But the saving grace is the theming, which keeps me from calling it overrated. I really like the Riddler, and he deserves to have a coaster with so much praise to a Batman villain that I really like. Speaking of Batman, that was the fourth coaster I rode at the park. And I'm just gonna say it straight. Batman clones are overrated. And yes, not even the best one claimed by enthusiasts can get out of my sight. I strongly dislike the theming on this ride. Batman is one of my least favorite traditional superheroes, but that is not the only reason why I call it overrated. I rode it in the back row because, considering that enthusiasts say that this is the best Batman clone in the world, it should be the most forceful in the back, right? Well, let me bring out a counter argument. The back row is also the roughest row on a coaster. Normally, that is. And when I rode it, I noticed at least 4 big jitters throughout the course. I'm not kidding. 4 jitters. Don't get me wrong, I felt the forces. They were powerful for a B&M invert that has clones all over the world. But I can't ignore the flaws this coaster has that make me rank it lower than most people do, including how rough it is. Then we scorched our way to the 5th coaster I rode in the park, Georgia Scorcher. And to be honest, I didn't know what to expect from this coaster because I do not like the stand-up coaster model one bit. I've ridden only one other in Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure, and I hated it. But this is nowhere near as bad. I rode it in the back row and actually got sustained airtime. Yeah, airtime on a stand-up coaster. I got it on the first drop, and for those of you who have ridden Apollo's Chariot in the same row, you know exactly what I mean. My best comparison is to that coaster's first drop, but on a B&M looper. And to be honest, the ride experience felt like this coaster was taking it easy on me. The ride had enough forces to be good, but it didn't numb my legs as much as Green Lantern. So I came off this coaster thinking it was better than Daredevil Dive. My second favorite coaster in the park was the 6th coaster I rode, Twisted Cyclone. And at the time of this video's recording, this is my least favorite RMC, but it's still terrific. Of course, the back is the row to go on this coaster, and that's where I rode it. This coaster has a crazy first drop. No other element on this coaster stood out as much as that first drop, but the ride is short, and I felt like it could run faster later on, so I decided to give a second ride later that day. But then we decided to take a break from the rides and eat, and this is where we ran into a Six Flags moment. My dad had to pay a total of at least $50. You heard me, $50 for all the food that we got. Overpriced? Glad you agree with me. But we actually liked the food at this park, even though it was completely standard. After eating, we resumed my credit hunting and went all the way to the back of the park to check out Superman Ultimate Flight. And, of course, this is better than the one at Great Adventure. But one thing I will say that the latter does better at is the pretzel loop. I remembered how intense the one at Great Adventures was. It was almost intense enough for me to gray out, while the one at Over Georgia's didn't stand out to me as much. I don't know what's up with that. But just looking at Over Georgia's, you can tell it's better because it uses the terrain to its advantage. Six Flags Great America and Great Adventures fly through an empty field of grass. After I got off, I noticed that the Great American Scream Machine was closed, and later I found out why. It was getting a retrack, so unfortunately I couldn't get to ride it. But after that, I went to Blue Hawk.
Before I tell you what I thought of it,
Lol, I thought it would be funny. Anyways, I didn't find this coaster to be as rough as people made it out to be, because first off, vest restraints, take away headbanging, right? Second off, I appreciate going through its butterfly element because it really helps the layout of this coaster, even though it's nothing special. And I feel glad that I got to experience another unique element that can almost be found on literally no other coaster. Looking at you, Guterix. And third off, the ride has numerous, and I mean numerous, near misses. So much that you may feel glad that you've been secured by the vest restraints. So in conclusion, Blue Hawk is a coaster that I would rather ride again over Talon at Dorney Park. Yes, unpopular opinion, I know. Before I got my last credit at this park, we went back to the back of the park to check out Justice League Battle for Metropolis. And this is definitely better than Reese's Cup Fusion at my home park. After helping the DC heroes save Metropolis from the Joker and Lex Luthor, I walked to the DC Kids area to check out the status of Joker Funhouse Coaster. and unfortunately, the Six Flags app said it was temporarily closed. I did see the coaster's train, but it was not fully loaded into the station, and there were no employees on deck to operate it. So unfortunately, I did not get that credit either. And finally, I got to get my last credit of the day, Dahlonega Mine Train. And no surprise, this is my least favorite coaster in the park, and it may be if Great American Scream Machine blows me away, or if I think Joker Funhouse Coaster is by far my favorite junior coaster I've ridden. This was the other coaster my dad got to ride with us, so at least there was that. But Dahlonega Mine Train is one of the jerkiest and may be the jankiest roller coaster that I have ever ridden. Not to mention a poor layout, even for a mine train. Super repetitive bank turns, taken by bad transitions, a very jerky finale, and the ride's final brake run hits hard. And 3 lift hills is kind of pointless, even for a mine train, that is. After we got off, we thought that once was enough, so we sat down for a little bit of time, but acrophobia was right near us, so I decided to get a ride on that, because Canopy Coaster says that it's the best non-coaster ride at the park, so I would feel really bad if I did not get to ride it. So I did, and as you can see, I was stunned that I was brave enough to get on this drop tower, and in the end, I agree with Canopy Coaster. Acrophobia is really fast and really unskippable when you visit Six Flags Over Georgia. And then, when Dad asked me what we should do before we leave, I said that we should head back to Goliath to get 3 more rides in the back row. And let me tell you, it is significantly better in the back row. Compared to the front row, here's the following. You get much stronger and more sustained airtime on its first drop, stronger airtime on all its camelbacks, and more sustained positive Gs at the bottom of each drop. Speaking of positive Gs, how can I not talk about the helix when you ride in the back row? It is so intense that, no joke, I grayed out on it on all 3 of my rides. That should tell you how intense it is. So in conclusion, Goliath in general is one of the most intense roller coasters I've ridden, amazing, and best of all, a coaster in my top 10. But that wasn't my last ride of the day. We headed near the front of the park so I can get my final ride on Twisted Cyclone. Again, I rode in the back row, and this time, it ran better. The drop was crazy as always, and everything delivered, but faster. So in conclusion, Twisted Cyclone is amazing, contrasts Goliath as the park's 1-2 punch, and best of all, is a coaster in my top 15. And that is all the rides I rode at Six Flags Over Georgia. Here is the total ride count. 4 on Goliath, 2 on Twisted Cyclone, and 1 on Riddler Mindbender, Batman the Ride, Georgia Scorcher, Daredevil Dive, Superman Ultimate Flight, Blue Hawk, and Dahlonega Mine Train. And I did not get to ride Great American Scream Machine or Joker Funhouse Coaster once. The 2 non-coaster rides I got to ride were Acrophobia and Justice League Battle for Metropolis. Now, where does Six Flags Over Georgia rank out of the 19 parks I've been to? It currently ranks number 7. I think this park is really close to the middle when it comes to Six Flags parks. But what are your thoughts about this park? Feel free to tell me your story and your experience in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a like and consider subscribing to this channel, as there will be more roller coaster and other related content coming to the future. It is completely free and is always one step closer for me to become the next El Toro Ryan of the coaster community. Don't forget to check out my Roblox account, where you can friend/follow me and have the rare chance of playing a Roblox game with me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.